A single mom was hired to pretend as the billionaire's wife until the lines between fake and real blurred. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. It was a cold November evening when Mia Carter, a 31-year-old single mom, stood outside a glass building in downtown Chicago, her hands trembling as she held the pink slip that ended her job. Her cheap winter coat did little against the icy wind. Snowflakes brushed her hair as city lights flickered across wet asphalt. Behind her, people in tailored coats hurried into warm cars. In front of her, the reflection in the glass showed a woman who had been holding everything together for too long. She had been late again. Not because she overslept, not because she was careless, but because her 6-year-old son Ethan had woken up wheezing. She had rushed him to the clinic before taking the subway sprinting through the turnstiles. But excuses did not matter to her manager. The company called it disciplinary action. Mia called it another closed door. Her phone buzzed. A message from her landlord. Rent due tomorrow. No more extensions. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She could not let Ethan see her cry again. The streetlight above flickered once, twice. That was when the sound of tires cutting through puddles made her look up. A sleek black Mercedes slowed beside her. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a face she recognized but never expected to see again. Alexander Reed, the billionaire CEO of the company that had just fired her, and the same man she had pulled out of a car accident 1 week ago when a delivery truck sideswiped his vehicle. She had stayed with him until the ambulance came, blood soaking her sleeves as he whispered, "Do not leave me." He had been unconscious when they took him away. She never thought she would see him again. Now he was looking at her through the open window. Sharp jaw, dark gray suit eyes, as unreadable as the skyline behind him. "Mia Carter," he said quietly, his voice steady, deliberate. "Get in. I need to talk to you." Mia froze, clutching her bag. "Mr. Reed, I just lost my job because of you," she said, her voice cracking despite herself. "I know," he replied. "That is exactly why I am here." She hesitated, glancing down the street. She had no reason to trust a man like him, wealthy, powerful, used to giving orders. But something in his tone stopped her. It was not arrogance. It was urgency. Inside the car, warmth rushed over her as the heater hummed softly. The smell of leather filled the silence. Alexander studied her face, his gaze lingering on the bruise near her wrist from when she had lifted his car door that night. "I owe you," he said simply. "You saved my life, and now I need you to save my reputation." Mia blinked. "I beg your pardon," he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "The board is forcing me to present a stable family image to close a billion-dollar merger. I need a wife on paper for 2 weeks. You are discreet, trustworthy, and the media does not know you. In return, I will pay you enough to cover your rent, your son's medical bills, and more." Mia let out a hollow laugh. "You are asking me to pretend to be your wife. You just fired me." His lips curved slightly. "Technically, the company did. I make the rules." She shook her head, trying to steady her breath. "This is insane." "I know," Alexander said, voice calm. "But think about it. 2 weeks. No strings, no affection. Just a contract." The words hung in the air, heavy as the falling snow. Outside, a siren wailed faintly in the distance. Inside the car, Mia stared at her reflection in the window, a tired mother, a woman cornered by circumstance. She thought of Ethan sleeping in their cold apartment, the unpaid hospital bills stacked on the table. She turned back to Alexander. "And if I say no," he met her gaze without hesitation, "then I find someone else. But you," his eyes softened slightly, "you deserve a break, Mia. Let me return what you gave me that night. A second chance." Her heartbeat thundered in her chest. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was fate. But when she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "Fine," she said. "But this is just business." Alexander nodded once. "Of course," he replied. "Purely professional." Yet, as the car pulled away and the snow swallowed the city behind them, neither of them realized the truth. Nothing about what was coming next would stay professional for long. Inside the car, silence filled the space between them. The city lights slid across the tinted windows, flashing over Mia's uneasy face. She sat stiffly, her hands twisting the strap of her bag, while Alexander Reed typed a quick message on his phone. When he finally looked up, his voice was calm but firm. "You will not be signing your soul away, Miss Carter. Just your signature. 2 weeks, a simple contract. You play the role of my wife, attend 2 events, and stay at my residence. After that, you walk away with a clean slate and enough money to start fresh." Mia frowned. "Why me? You could hire an actress, a model, someone who actually knows your world?" Alexander studied her carefully. "Because actresses come with headlines. You come with silence. You are ordinary, real, believable. The public will trust you." She stared out the window, watching the snow smear against the glass. "And what do I tell my son? Tell him you got a new job," Alexander said simply. "He will be safe. My driver will pick him up from school. You will both stay at the guest house. Everything will be arranged." The words should have comforted her, but instead they sounded like a trap wrapped in politeness. Still, she could feel the weight of her unpaid bills pressing against her chest. Alexander handed her a black folder. Inside were printed pages, each line precise and cold. Clause 1. Confidentiality. Clause 2. No physical affection unless required in public. Clause 3. No interference in business matters. Clause 4. 4. End of contract means end of contact. Clause 5. Payment upon completion. Mia's eyes lingered on the final clause, the amount written in bold. It was more money than she had seen in her life. Enough for Ethan's surgery rent and a new start. Her throat tightened. She looked up. "You really think people will believe I am your wife?" Alexander leaned back, his lips curving slightly. "They will believe whatever I tell them to believe. My world runs on perception, Miss Carter, and for the next 2 weeks, perception will be our business." He slid a pen toward her. The silver barrel glinted under the car's interior light. For a long moment she hesitated, feeling the tremor in her hands. She thought of Ethan's drawings taped to the fridge, his voice whispering, "Mommy, are we going to be okay?" Mia exhaled slowly and signed her name. Alexander watched her finish, his expression unreadable. Then, almost softly, he said, "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Reed." The title hit her like a foreign word, one that did not belong to her but suddenly clung to her skin. When the car stopped in front of a gated estate on the north side of the city, Mia's heart pounded. The mansion rose like a fortress of glass and steel. She stepped out, clutching her small purse, the snow crunching beneath her worn shoes. Every window glowed warm gold against the night sky. A butler opened the door, greeting her with a polite nod. "Good evening, Mrs. Reed." Mia's lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked toward Alexander. He simply adjusted his cufflinks and said, "Remember, this is temporary. Keep your head up, smile when you must, and do not forget Clause 2. She nodded faintly. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and quiet power. A spiral staircase wound upward, portraits of strangers staring down at her. Everything shone, polished marble floors, tall mirrors, fresh flowers that looked too perfect to be real. As she followed Alexander through the grand hallway, Mia felt the truth settle deep in her chest. She had stepped into a different world, one built on contracts, secrets, and illusions. And for the first time, she wondered not what it would cost to enter, but what it might cost to leave. The following morning began before sunrise. The mansion was still wrapped in soft gray light. Mia Carter awoke in a bed larger than her entire apartment, the sheets cool and smooth against her skin. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the faint outline of the black folder on the nightstand, the contract that had changed everything overnight. She sat up slowly. The guest room was elegant but impersonal, decorated in shades of cream and silver. Even the air smelled expensive, like polished wood and jasmine. On the dresser lay a neatly folded outfit and a handwritten note in bold, deliberate handwriting. "Breakfast is served at 7. Be ready by 8. Dress appropriately. A. R. Mia stared at the initials, exhaling softly. The man wasted no words. Downstairs, the dining room was quiet except for the ticking of a grandfather clock. Alexander Reed sat at the end of the long mahogany table, reading the morning news on a tablet. His suit was immaculate, his posture straight, his face calm as stone. The moment she entered, his eyes flicked up. "Good morning, Mrs. Reed," he said without emotion. Mia hesitated, her cheeks warming. "Good morning, Mr. Reed." He nodded toward the seat beside him. "Eat. You will need energy. We have a schedule today." She sat down, her eyes sweeping over the untouched breakfast spread, perfectly sliced fruit, steaming coffee, eggs arranged like art. It felt too formal, too foreign. She picked at the toast in silence. Alexander lowered his tablet. "You will meet my assistant in an hour. She will take you through the schedule of the gala, the expected guests, and how to handle questions from the press. Our story is simple. We met last year during a charity event in New York. We married privately last month in Europe." Mia swallowed. "So the press believes we are newlyweds," he nodded. "Happily married newlyweds." Her brow furrowed. That last part might be the hardest to fake. For the first time, a flicker of amusement crossed his face. "You will manage. You are surprisingly convincing when you are nervous." She shot him a look but said nothing. An hour later, the mansion turned into a training ground. His assistant, a sharp woman named Clara, walked Mia through etiquette drills and mock interviews. How to smile without revealing too much. How to stand beside Alexander at public events. How to touch his arm lightly during photos. Mia stumbled through the first round, answering too fast, laughing at the wrong moments. Clara sighed, but Alexander's tone stayed even. "Again," he said. "Slower this time. You are not a waitress. You are a wife." By the fifth attempt, Mia's voice grew steady. Her smile softened. The rhythm of their exchanges began to flow naturally. When Clara dismissed her for a break, Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You learn quickly," he said. "I have to," she replied, brushing hair from her face. "You are paying me too much to fail." Later that afternoon, Alexander led her into the wardrobe room, where rows of dresses shimmered under soft lighting. He gestured toward them. "You will need proper attire. Choose what feels right. The first event is a private dinner tomorrow." Mia's eyes widened at the collection gowns worth more than a year of rent, each one delicate and intimidating. She touched a silver dress with trembling fingers. "I do not belong in these." Alexander's gaze softened for a fraction of a second. "You belong wherever you choose to stand, Mrs. Reed." The words caught her off guard. For a man made of steel and logic, that line sounded dangerously close to kindness. That evening, after the staff retired, Mia walked through the quiet halls alone. The mansion felt less like a home and more like a museum, beautiful, cold, filled with things that looked alive but were not. She stopped at a framed photo on the hallway wall. A younger Alexander stood beside an older woman with gentle eyes. The resemblance was clear. His mother, she guessed. Before she could look closer, his voice came from behind her. "She died 8 years ago." Mia turned startled. Alexander stood at the end of the corridor, his expression unreadable. "She built this house," he continued, "but she never got to live in it. Cancer took her before it was finished." "I am sorry," Mia said softly. He nodded once, stepping closer. "The media tore her apart near the end. My father's scandal nearly destroyed her name. That is why this merger matters. The press will not ruin another Reed." There was something raw in his tone, a quiet grief buried under control. Mia met his eyes. "And I am part of that protection." "You are the illusion that keeps the wolves away," Alexander replied. "At least until the deal closes." The silence between them stretched. For the first time, Mia saw not a billionaire but a man carrying the weight of too many expectations. When she finally went back to her room, she found herself unable to sleep. The city lights glimmered beyond the tall windows. Somewhere downstairs, Alexander's voice murmured on a late phone call, steady, commanding, but softer than before. Mia lay awake, thinking of her son, of the contract of the man whose life she had once saved, and the strange new one she was now pretending to share. Outside, the snow kept falling quiet and endless, blurring the lines between truth and pretense a little more with every hour. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with quiet preparation. Drivers moved in and out of the circular driveway, catering vans arrived, and flower arrangements filled the front hall with the scent of lilies and white roses. It was the day of the private dinner Alexander had mentioned, their first public appearance as husband and wife. Mia Carter stood before a tall mirror while a stylist pinned her hair into soft waves. When the stylist stepped back, Mia hardly recognized herself. For years, she had been the woman behind the counter, the one people forgot to thank. Now, she looked like she belonged to another world. Alexander entered without knocking. He wore a black tuxedo, his cufflinks catching the light. For a long moment, he said nothing. His gaze moved from her reflection to her eyes in the mirror. "You look perfect," he said at last. Mia turned slightly. "Perfect for the illusion, you mean?" He almost smiled. "Exactly." They arrived at the event just after sunset. Cameras flashed as soon as they stepped out of the car. The sound of shutters clicking filled the air like rain. Alexander's hand rested lightly on the small of her back, a simple, practiced gesture for the cameras. Mia kept her smile steady, the one she had practiced 100 times in front of the mirror. Inside the ballroom, soft jazz played beneath a ceiling of crystal chandeliers. The air smelled of champagne and expensive perfume. Waiters glided between tables, carrying silver trays. Everywhere Mia looked, people shimmered in sequins and ambition. Alexander introduced her to a circle of investors, each one measuring her with polite curiosity. "This is my wife, Mia," he said smoothly. "She prefers to stay out of the spotlight, but I insisted she join me tonight." Mia shook hands, answered questions, and repeated their rehearsed story. How they met when they married, why they kept it private. The lies rolled off her tongue more easily than she expected. Still, she could feel the burn of Alexander's gaze every time she spoke, as if he were watching for cracks in the mask. Halfway through dinner, a journalist from a business magazine approached their table. "Mr. Reed, your merger is the talk of the city. How does married life affect your priorities?" Mia felt Alexander pause beside her. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that disarmed a room. "Marriage reminds you of what is worth protecting," he said, glancing at her. "It teaches you that loyalty and trust are not negotiable." The reporter turned to Mia. "And you, Mrs. Reed, how is it being married to one of the most powerful men in the city?" Mia could hear her heart pounding. She remembered Clara's training. Stay calm, speak simply, and smile. But something inside her rebelled against the script. She took a quiet breath and said, "Power is only impressive when it is used with kindness. That is what I see in him." The journalist smiled, clearly charmed. Alexander's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. When the reporter moved on, he leaned close and murmured, "That was not part of the plan." "Neither was sincerity," Mia whispered back. Later, as the music swelled and the dance floor filled, Alexander extended his hand to her. "One dance," he said. She hesitated. "I am not exactly ballroom material." "You will manage," he replied, a faint echo of their first training session. He guided her onto the floor. The crowd blurred around them as they moved in slow rhythm. Mia tried to focus on her steps, but the warmth of his hand at her waist unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. His touch was steady, confident, but not controlling. When their eyes met, the noise of the room faded. For a brief moment, it felt real. They stepped apart, applause rising from the nearby tables. Alexander's expression returned to its practiced calm. "You did well," he said quietly. Mia forced a small smile. "So did you." On the way back to the mansion, the car was silent. The city lights rolled across Alexander's face, catching the distant tension in his jaw. Mia turned toward the window, her reflection layered over the skyline. She could still feel the echo of his hand on her back, the faint tremor in her chest that refused to settle. When they reached home, Alexander walked her to the door of her room. "The press loved you," he said. "You handled them better than expected." "Years of handling impatient customers," she replied lightly. "It builds endurance." For the first time, he laughed softly, the sound quick and low. "Perhaps I underestimated you, Mia." "Most people do," she said, and the corners of her mouth lifted. He nodded, his gaze lingering a second longer than necessary. Rest. Tomorrow will be more demanding. When he turned away, Mia stood frozen for a moment, her hand on the doorknob. Inside, the echo of the ballroom still pulsed the music, the lights, the pretend affection that had started to feel dangerously close to truth. She touched her collarbone, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. Somewhere beneath all the rules and rehearsed smiles, something unfamiliar was growing. It was not part of the contract. It was not supposed to happen at all. Outside, the snow kept falling silent and unending, as if trying to erase the line between what was fake and what was slowly becoming real. The next morning came with headlines. Mystery Mrs. Reed stuns at gala, one article read. Another called her the woman who softened the city's coldest billionaire. Mia Carter stared at the news on her phone, her coffee untouched. She could hardly believe that the pictures splashed across every site were hers. The woman smiling in the silver gown beside Alexander Reed, his hand resting gently at her back. Alexander entered, holding a folder. He looked calm, as if the night before had been just another business transaction. You did well, he said. The board is pleased. The investors believe our marriage is genuine. That was the goal. Mia nodded, unsure why his praise felt hollow. Then your plan is working, she said. It is, he agreed, but that means we need to maintain the image. There is another event tomorrow, a charity dinner for children's hospitals. You will attend as Mrs. Reed. At the mention of children, something in her face softened. Hospitals? Yes. The foundation donates every year. He paused. You may find it personal. The next evening, the ballroom was filled with laughter and candlelight. This time, the event felt different. Less about money, more about humanity. Volunteers spoke about medical aid for children, about parents who fought for one more day. As Mia listened, her chest tightened. She thought of Ethan lying in the hospital bed months ago, wires tracing his tiny heartbeat. Her throat burned. Alexander noticed her silence. Are you all right? He asked quietly. I am fine, she said, blinking away the sting in her eyes. Just remembering. When the host invited them to the stage for a photo, Mia hesitated. Alexander gently placed his hand over hers, grounding her. We are helping them, he murmured. Remember that. She nodded, forcing a smile for the cameras. But when she looked at him again, the cold distance in his eyes had faded. For a fleeting second, he looked almost vulnerable. After the event, as they stepped outside into the crisp winter air, Alexander opened the car door for her. It was a small gesture, but it made her chest ache in a way she could not explain. Good work tonight, he said. You spoke well with the donors. Those families reminded me why I said yes, she replied softly. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, Perhaps you were the right choice after all. The ride home was quiet. Snow dusted the windshield, melting into slow rivulets of silver. Mia stared out her heart, caught between two worlds, the one she had come from and the one she was only pretending to belong to. Inside that silence, something fragile began to take shape. It was not affection, yet not trust, but it was enough to make her wonder how much longer she could keep pretending. 2 days later, a heavy snowstorm swept through the city. The mansion felt quieter than usual, its corridors wrapped in pale light and the sound of wind against glass. Mia Carter spent the morning reading in the sitting room, her thoughts drifting between the past and the strange present she now lived in. Alexander had left early for a board meeting, but as dusk fell, she found him in the conservatory, standing beside a tall window that overlooked the frozen garden. The soft glow from the fireplace cast shadows across his face. He looked different, tired, thoughtful, human. You skipped dinner, she said gently. He turned, surprised by her voice. I was not hungry. You have been working non-stop since the gala, she replied. If you collapse, who will keep up the illusion? For a moment, the corner of his mouth lifted. You are beginning to sound like my assistant. Your assistant does not bring you soup, Mia said, holding up the small tray she carried. The scent of broth filled the room. He exhaled, almost smiling. You made this, I had the chef teach me, she said simply. It tastes like something my mother used to make. He accepted the bowl, his fingers brushing hers. The touch was light, but enough to send warmth through the cold space. They stood in silence while he ate the quiet broken only by the crackle of fire. After a while, he said softly, "You should know something about me, Mia. I was married once. Years ago." She blinked. "I did not know that." "It was brief," he said. "We married for convenience. She wanted status, I wanted silence. When my mother died, I realized I had built a life made of transactions. Nothing real remained." Mia looked at him, her heart twisting at the raw honesty in his tone. "Then why repeat it with me? Because this time I thought I could control it," he said, meeting her eyes. "But lately I am not sure I can." The admission hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. Mia's breath caught, but she did not look away. "Alexander," she began, but the words slipped away. He set the bowl down and stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth from his body. "I know this is supposed to be pretend," he said quietly. "But every time I see you with Ethan, every time you speak to people as if you truly care, it feels different." Mia's chest tightened. "Do not say things that will make this harder," she whispered. "I am only saying the truth," he replied. Silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. Finally, Mia took a small step back. "The contract ends in 4 days," she said, her voice trembling. "After that, you will not have to pretend anymore." Alexander's gaze softened, but he said nothing. As she turned to leave, he murmured almost to himself, "That is what I am afraid of." Mia paused at the doorway, her hand trembling on the frame. The snow outside kept falling thick and silent, blurring everything beyond the glass, just like the line between duty and desire that neither of them could ignore anymore. The morning after the storm, the world outside lay covered in white. The air smelled clean, the kind of silence that made everything feel new. But inside the mansion, the calm did not last. Alexander Reed had left early again, his tone clipped and distant. Something had changed. By noon, Mia Carter noticed the staff whispering. Phones rang in the hallway, short, urgent conversations she could not fully hear. When she entered the library, Clara Alexander's assistant quickly ended a call and looked up with a guarded expression. "What is happening?" Mia asked. Clara hesitated. "It is the media," she said at last. "Someone leaked a copy of your contract. The story is everywhere." The words hit like a stone in Mia's chest. "What the papers call it, a sham marriage," Clara continued. "They have the terms, the date, everything. Reporters are already waiting outside the gate." Mia's hands went cold. "Who leaked it?" Clara shook her head. "We do not know. Alexander is trying to contain the damage, but the board is furious. They believe you were the one who sold the story." "That is not true," Mia said sharply. "I would never," "I know," Clara interrupted softly. "But the timing looks bad. You should stay in your room until this calms down." Hours passed. The phone kept ringing. From the upstairs window, Mia saw flashes from cameras at the gate. Each one felt like a knife of light cutting through the fragile world they had built. She thought of Ethan, of the stories his classmates might hear, of how people could twist everything she had done for survival into shame. His jaw was tight, his eyes dark. "We need to talk," he said. She followed him into the study. The room smelled of rain-soaked wool and anger. "Tell me the truth, Mia," he said. "Did you speak to anyone? Did you send anything?" Her voice shook. "You think I would destroy my own name, my son's peace?" After everything I have done, Alexander's expression flickered, torn between reason and doubt. "The documents came from inside this house. Only 2 people had access, you and me." Mia's eyes burned. "Then maybe you should ask yourself who else benefits from watching you fall." He stared at her, the silence between them sharp as glass. "You should leave tonight," he said quietly. "The contract is finished." Mia's heart cracked open. "You are firing me again. This is not about employment," he said, his voice cold. "It is about trust. And right now, I cannot trust anyone." Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall. "Then you have learned nothing about me." She pulled the thin silver ring from her finger, the symbol of their fake marriage, and placed it on the desk. "You wanted a wife on paper?" When she turned to go, Alexander's hand twitched as if he might stop her, but pride held him back. The door closed behind her with a sound that felt final. Outside, the night wind howled across the snow. Mia walked past the gate, ignoring the flashing cameras. Each question thrown at her, was it all fake? How much were you paid felt like another blow. She kept walking, her breath visible in the cold air. Every step took her farther from the mansion, from Alexander, from the fragile dream she had tried to believe in. And somewhere behind those tall walls, Alexander stood alone in his study, staring at the ring on his desk, realizing too late that what he had just lost was never part of the contract at all. 2 days later, the city could not stop talking about the scandal. Every news channel replayed the same headline: "Fake marriage exposed, the billionaire and his contract bride." Reporters stood outside the gates of Alexander Reed's mansion waiting for him to speak. Inside the house was silent, stripped of warmth. Alexander had not slept since Mia left. The silver ring still lay on his desk beside the signed contract that had become evidence of his own blindness. Each line he once thought practical now read like a confession of cowardice. He could buy reputation, yes, but not the woman who had given him sincerity without a price. In the boardroom that morning, the directors demanded answers. "You have damaged this company's credibility," one of them snapped. "Investors are withdrawing." Alexander stood, his voice steady but low. "The responsibility is mine alone. Mia Carter did nothing wrong. You expect us to believe she had no part in this," another challenged. He met their eyes without hesitation. "I do not expect you to believe. I am telling you the truth. I will step down temporarily until this is resolved." When he left the building, cameras flashed like lightning. But this time he did not hide behind tinted windows or public statements. He went straight to the hospital where the Children's Foundation gala had donated weeks before. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and hope. Mia was there, volunteering in the playroom with a group of children. Her hair was tied back, her sleeves rolled up. She looked exhausted but peaceful. When she turned and saw him, the color drained from her face. "I thought the cameras would follow you anywhere," she said quietly. "They did," Alexander admitted. "But for once, I wanted them to see something true." He reached into his coat pocket and unfolded a check, placing it on the table beside her. It was made out to the foundation in Ethan's name. "I told the press everything," he said. "I told them the truth about the contract, about my arrogance, about you. I told them you were the only honest part of this entire story." Mia's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed calm. "Why tell them now? Because I was wrong," he said simply. "And because I would rather lose everything than let you think I did not care." For the first time since she met him, Alexander Reed looked unguarded, stripped of power and pride. Mia took a slow breath, glancing at the children laughing nearby. "I do not know if I can forgive you," she said softly. "You do not have to," he replied. "Just let me make things right." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving the cameras behind this time, not as the billionaire who bought perfection, but as the man finally learning what it meant to earn redemption. 3 months later, spring sunlight poured through the glass walls of the New Hearts of Hope Foundation, built with the funds Alexander had donated after stepping down from his company. Reporters no longer asked about the scandal. They asked about the children. They asked about the woman who had turned disgrace into purpose. Mia Carter stood beside a display of drawings made by patients, colorful hearts, stick figures, smiling suns. Near the center, one drawing showed a tall man holding hands with a small boy. The words beneath it read, "Thank you, Mr. Reed." A familiar voice spoke behind her. "Ethan insisted on drawing my hair too dark." She turned. Alexander Reed stood in the doorway, no longer wearing his corporate armor. He looked lighter somehow, the weight gone from his eyes. Mia smiled softly. "He still talks about you. He said you kept your promise." "I told him I would finish what we started," Alexander said. "The foundation is his now in name and in heart." They stood together for a moment, surrounded by children's laughter echoing through the halls. "I came today to return something," he said quietly, opening his hand. The silver ring lay on his palm, glinting under the light. "Not as a symbol of what we pretended to be, but as a promise for what we could be if you will have me." Mia's breath caught. She looked down at the ring, then at him. "Are you sure you want something real this time?" He smiled, his voice steady. "I have never been more certain." Mia placed her hand in his closing, his fingers around the ring. "Then let us begin without contracts." Outside, children's laughter rose into the warm air as they walked toward the sunlight together. Two people who had finally learned that love, when honest needs no signature to last.